Good morning. Good morning. So I've been working more on this 175 bike here, and I'll flip this around and tell you what I've been doing with it so far. I'm just waiting on the new reed valve arriving with the needle bearing. Should be coming soon, and I'll be able to actually build it. What I've done to it so far is I didn't actually videotape this because it's quite easy, but I actually looped all the cables on here. If you remember, what we had is this was actually stuck, but now I've actually got it connected up to the carburetor here, allowing where the seat goes. This works a treat now. Boom boom. While it's doing that, the cables are actually starting to, you can actually, in here it's starting to break, so they actually do need cables at some point, but for the time being that works perfectly. And the brakes, I used a motion flow, a little lubricator, which if you take off the cables here and attach it on and scoosh it up, it flies all the way through and cleans them all perfectly. The other thing I did was I just sort of emery down took off the rusting that was on the forks there. I changed all the fork oil. I've stuck an SE 30. It can take 10, 20 or 30, but for my purposes, just to get it going, I'll just stuck in 30 because it's going to actually move up and down. It was actually filthy inside there. I've changed the oil, and the actual oil in there was, most have changed it when we built it years ago because it's still clean, but that's actually fine. I actually got a new battery, and the new battery's arrived. I put a new air filter in also, which had arrived and bought. I was working on the electrics last night, and with the electrics on, we're getting the indicator flashing here, this side that we got before. This side they actually come on now. I've got them actually working at the back and the front, but it doesn't flash. Ambulance away up the road. So I think the flasher unit's out, so I've ordered a new flasher unit up for that. The other thing that was bugging me last night was that this battery, this back light wasn't working. I'm going to check this. And I spent forever tracing the flow all the way through here from the brake light switch, which I thought wasn't working, to the back. And it turns out, even with the brake light disconnected from here, I noticed there was a very fine filament actually lighting up. And it turns out the reason for that is that I forgot it's got a front brake switch. I've taken the brake switch out of here. It was actually broken off. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to see, you probably won't be able to see in there. But the wires had broken off in there, and it had like one strand shorting, so it was actually getting juiced the whole time. So I haven't checked this yet, but I'm hoping, without any luck now, that since that's disconnected, if I press the brake light here, it should work. And it's not. So, and I've got it connected, but let me... That was actually, so it's still not working. That's a pain. The way this works is pretty easy here. It's just a little brake light switch. Inside it there's two connectors with a middle ball attached to the spring. You pull it down, the ball makes contact and sends the juice up. Now I know that this actually, so actually what I could do is I'm just going to disconnect the switch and join these together to see if we get a brighter light at the back, because at the moment we've got one filament on. So let me just do that. So all I'm going to do is disconnect the two plugs here and then connect them from the actual switch and connect them to each other, and that will send the voltage all the way up. See what happens. Okay, so what I did, I forgot to, it wasn't actually working there for a bit. The reason it wasn't working is that I forgot these two wires were actually still touching each other in there, so just cut that off. But now, yeah, you can see it's just that's it, not working. And if I hit the brake here, there you go. Yeah, baby. Good. So that was a job well done. I think that's it for now. I just ordered up, the tyre is flat here, these are crap. So I just ordered up the tyres. The actual swing arm lock nut wasn't there, I've ordered up a swing arm lock nut. I tried to tighten up the front axle nut on here. and the castle nut, I went bang, the castle nut stripped. I don't think I've stripped the axle nut, I think I've just stripped the, looking inside the castle nut to look crap. So yeah, so we were looking forward to actually putting this back together. One of the things I was looking at potentially was to try it on my on here with the heads. I've actually all put back together here. So I mentioned to you, this wasn't actually this here's too far up, and I think what I was going to do is I was just going to get a Dremel and Dremel that out. I'm just waiting on the actual new reed switch to come, because I think it's a slightly different angle on it and it should work. And with that working, I should be in business. I should be in business to get this thing going. And I can switch that off now. And that's good. I checked all the magneto works, the spark works, etc. So everything is actually going. I ordered up a new headlight also. So it turns out in these bikes that the headlights only work when the engine's running. So there's a high beam. The other thing that's not working, which I have to check, is a neutral switch. That's just that wire, so it could be the sensor. I'm going to double check that. But other than that, this is ready for an initial rebuild. I'm going to keep this colour. My son done green. I don't know why he did green, it's disgusting. And he only actually painted it with spray paint. It's not powder coated by any reasons. You can see it's chipping. But for an initial stab to get going, I think this could be quite fun. I'm actually looking forward to getting this going and running. Okay, that's it for now today, folks. Okay, so this is welcome back again to the DT175E rebuild. So all the engine parts I need have actually arrived now to do a rebuild of the main cylinder, which is cool. And while so I have them all here, so I have the actual cylinder. I've actually put on the cylinder head here loosely onto the top. That's a new barrel I got from China for a couple of $100. I was waiting on this cage for the conrod, so now I actually have that. These are the gaskets for the reed valve. Then we have the cylinder, piston rings, piston gasket, piston, gudgeon pin, reed valve, and these are the cylinder bolts. And then these are for keeping on the reed valve. Now the only one problem, as I've mentioned to you before, was I've got a new one of these coming, because I think it's not been matching up to this. I'm about a little bit out here, so you can actually see in the holes here, I'm about probably on one side. So you can see actually on that side the holes don't really line up at all. And initially I thought it was because these little screws holding on the back stop plates for the reed valves were hitting off here, which was pretty rough. I actually took a Dremel here with the aluminium, and I used a 9901 cutter, which doesn't clog, and I just actually smoothed it off. But I've actually found out it's actually not that, it's actually the stop plates themselves here are hitting off the inside of this slope. Now I don't really want to grind that down, because I think the new reed valve is coming slightly different. I think it's actually got a slightly thinner berth in here, and it'll just slot in there. But for the time being, since these can be replaced once it's on the bike, I'm going to actually just move these in a little bit, probably a millimeter each side, with the vice grips. This particular one is actually looking good. So how to check these things, actually, if you actually look up into the light, I'll put off the light in here. If you actually look up in here, you don't see any light appearing, and when you open up until you spring open the top, so I don't see any light appearing from there. So this is actually in quite good shape. Now actually, when I looked on the internet and started reading up about the operation of these reed valves, these things vibrate in here the same speed of the engine, so they can go up to about, you know, if you're turning over at 5,000 RPM, these little springs, or these little flaps in here, actually move it back and forth. You can see it flapping open here. Those are opening and closing at 5,000 times a second also, 5 times a minute also. Well, I saw a paper where they actually simulated the design of this. I saw the mathematical equations for how they actually calculate what the particular pressure of this thing would be. You can see these are actually flush here, which is cool. And they actually can go up to, some of them, 5mm. So I'm going to actually measure the distance between the top here and the end of the stop. And I think it's just eyeballing it here. It looks a bit less than 5mm. It looks a little bit greater than 5mm. So if I could take a millimetre off each side of that, hopefully it's enough to clear this slot. Anyway, let's try that and see what happens. There you go. Well, lo and behold, I moved out to 6mm, and with the 2 gaskets, I managed to get that to actually clamp down. Yeah, that's sweet. And the notch is actually for the carburetors at the top, which is what you want. Good. Now we can go into the fun stuff, which is actually putting in the piston. Okay, that's the next job. So I'm going to put the gudgeon pin into the piston and into the collar rod with the little cage. I've got assembly grease here, so we'll get started with that. Okay, so I've now put in the gudgeon pin, and I just have to put in the circlips and the arrow on the top of the pistons looking forward. Just make sure when you do this operation, folks, it's like put a cloth underneath here, because these are the gudgeon pins, retaining clips, and it's if you don't have that cloth there, then if you put this in, it springs loose, it can fall into the actual engine, and then you're buggered. And believe me, I know that from experience. So yeah, so let's get these suckers in. Okay, well, that's the circlips in each side. They went in okay. So now I have to put the piston rings on. And there's actually little locating pins. If you'll be able to see these. There's one here, there's one on the other side. And basically you want to put the rings in so that the gap between them is on either side of that locating pin. So that's the next job. Put them on, and then I'll put the barrel on. So piston rings, I just measured the piston rings, exact same thickness, both of them. So the way these go up, I don't know if you'll be able to read this out, but there's a little R. Let's see if we can focus this. No, you might not be able to read, but just on that gap there, to the left of it, there's a little letter R. So you want them facing up. So let's see if we can get these on next. And these actually go on just by actually stepping on, clipping it around here, no problem. Yeah, to make this easier, I've actually put back in the little block of wood to support the piston skirt, so I don't damage it. Well, I was just about to, I got the piston on here, and I've got the rings lined up. And I was about to put the barrel on, and I forgot to put the gasket on. But then when I actually put the gasket on, the gaskets, they've cut the gasket the wrong frickin' size. These are overhanging the edge. I'm going to have to go and get a gasket and get some gasket paper. Where the frick am I going to get that? See if we can find some. Okie dokie. Bollocks. So that's the next job. Okay, so now the gasket here is, they've made the wrong gasket. When they did the template, they've cut this out way too narrow here. So I need to make a new gasket, so I just actually went down to the local store and got gasket paper. And I'll make a new gasket up. And here we go, so I just actually took a template and cut this gasket out, so it should fit fine. We'll see. There you go, perfect, much better. Bingo. Okay, I can put the piston head barrel back on now. Okay, so that's me got the cylinder now on, and I've torqued this up to, I can see how cheap this paint is. Anyway, I've torqued this up to 27 pound-foot. And put the head on now, and well, actually I'm not going to put the head on. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. So this is actually on, and it's I have to say I managed to get a little manoeuvring to get this thing on, lined up with the locating pins, but oh, that's not good. Shit, that just came out there. Shit. Piston ring just came out there. See? Oh man. See the piston ring just came out? Bollocks, it just came out of the locating pins. That is not what you want. Yeah, that came right out of the locating pins here. Ah, you shitters. Let's see if I can get that. That piston ring came out. Wow. I'll have to actually fix that then. See that there? That is not good. Okay, let me fix that. Bugger. Well, I managed to get that off and actually back on again. I forgot the gasket's going to be on there, which will raise it up a little bit. Cylinder gasket, and it will stop the piston, the ring coming out. I'm like, shit, I wonder what was going on there. Anyway, I'm going to torque these up to 27 and then put the head on and keep this, and I'll show you what I'll do next. Well, the head's on, but I have a problem. It's hitting off the top. I'll put it back down again. Bang! You can hear it go clunk. So it's hitting off of something. What the hell is it hitting off of? So the only thing I can think of is that the gasket that I've stuck on here is too thin. And it seems to be thick. It's too thin, and its head's too down too much. So I mean, it's just slightly hitting off the top here. What the hell? That is not good. But this paper, the gasket paper I got was well, the gasket paper was thicker than this. So check. I checked. It's just slightly thinner, but I can't imagine it being just that. Bollocks. Well, I'm going to have to take this off again. And as I said, as we did see earlier, the piston came up through the barrel there, so there's two alternatives here. You can either raise the bottom of the cylinder with a gasket, just to raise the top of it slightly. I don't think that's going to help too much. Or I can put on a little thicker head gasket. And I have the old one here as a spacer. And I have to admit, the old one is thicker. The old one is definitely a little bit thicker than the one that was in it. It's copper. What I'm going to do is, just out of curiosity, I'm going to take the head off and put this bigger gasket, two gaskets on, and see if that gives us the clearance what we need. But it's hitting, well, at least I'll be able to double check. So let's find out. So here's the problem, is that the piston again has come up and the piston ring's about to come out. So effectively, this piston is a standard bore, but it's come up too high. And it's come up just a smidgen's too high. So the only way I'm going to fix that is by actually putting in a thicker gasket underneath the bottom here. What a pain in the baby! It's going to have to take it all off again. This is the third time. So it's quite easy to get the piston ring off this time. Now I knew what happens. What I'm going to do actually is, just since I've got this on, you can hear that's pretty good. You can. Yeah, that's coming up. That's coming up way too high. Shit! This is the piston for this cylinder. It came in the kit. Huh. So yeah, the only way I'm going to do that is to actually... But that's quite a distance out. And it's just a small lip it's fitting inside there. So what I'm going to do actually, so I'm going to make sure the piston's not hitting off the head here. I'm going to put the head back on with the gasket there, and I'm just going to press on and make sure it's not, the piston's not hitting off the top. If the piston's not hitting off the top, then it's just the rings that come out, which is fine, because that just means it's just a hair. It really is just a hair. So if I thicken up the two gaskets and put the two gaskets on, I'll put on the original, I'll put on the, not original, the gasket that came with it. I actually remember taking the gasket off here. Now I think about it, the gasket I took off of here, I should have kept it, crap. It was actually pretty thick. Yeah, I've got a new gasket set coming, but I bet that's what the problem is. The gasket that was in there was actually quite a few, it was actually pretty thick. This one is much thinner, so that's what the issue is. Anyway, I'm going to put the head on. Then what I'm going to do is just double check the oil pump is working. So since the head's off, what I can do is I can get a drill. In fact, I'll do that now. And I've already bled from the tank to the oil pump, and you can see there's this light dark green. Got the oil, and then this one's light green. So what I'm going to be doing here is then I'm going to spin this over and see if we can just pump the oil up through here just to make sure the pump's working, and that'll do another double check. Here I've taken it all off again. So this piston diameter is the exact same as the old piston diameter, which is fine, but the problem is, as you can see here, I just measure this up. The bottom piston is actually too long. I actually measured it, and the distance from the I'm not too bothered about the shank here, because that could be any length, but I measured it from the top here of the gudgeon pinhole to the edge of the cylinder, the edge of the piston, which would actually be the right length. And effectively this one is basically the entire distance from the slot to the edge here is how long it is. So this piston actually basically comes up to the first. The old piston is the length of the first slot, and that's not. So that's basically why the ring was popping out and why the head is going. So I'm going to have to order up an official piston. If I can find one with this, see if I can find this size, but glad I found that. I turned over the engine there when it was on, trying to get a pump to go. I thought it would do it with the drill, but the oil wasn't pumping out here. Now, when you do bleed this, you're supposed to do 4,000 RPM. I wasn't getting anywhere near that with my drill, obviously. So I'm going to leave that at the moment. I mean, it's getting oil into it, which for sure. But we'll fix that next. So onto the internet and order up another piston. Well, I'm not going to be able to fix that today after all. What a pain. Anyway, getting there.